Stoa is a digital campfire where we cohere in dialogue about what matters most at the knife's edge of what's happening now.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Stoa. I am Peter Lindberg, the steward of the Stoa, and the Stoa is a place for us to cohere and dialogue about what matters most at the knife's edge of this very moment. And Anna Gatt is here at the Stoa. Anna is waving right now. She's the founder and CEO of Interintellect. And according to the Interintellect's website, it is a community hosting the most interesting conversation on the internet. So perhaps after today's conversation, the Stoa might be the second most interesting conversational space that's happening on the internet. We'll see. It's too soon to tell. So I haven't been personally to an Interintellect session. I've been trying to, and I think this is the first time Anna's came to the Stoa. And it's kind of interesting that our paths sort of were running parallel for a while. I released this white paper on the Medium called The Mimetic Tribes of Culture War 2.0. And then Anna released one on Medium as well called We're a Niche, We Just Don't Know It Yet. And then when COVID came online, we both launched these online communities, the Stoa Interintellect, and there's people that are facilitators for both, like Rachel Haywire, Maybe Gray. And the spaces are held differently. There's a different vibe. And so perhaps that's an area we can explore today. And I'm also interested in exploring this whole digital campfire thing and how Interintellect kind of came a concept to an actual kind of space. So I'll take Anna in a moment, but how today is going to work. Anna and I, we're going to talk for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll call on you and mute yourself and ask your question to Anna. This will be on YouTube. So if you don't want your to be on YouTube, just indicate that in the chat. We'll be here for 60 minutes in total. So that being said, I think I have everything covered. Allow Anna to unmute herself. Anna, welcome to the Stoa.
Thank you so much. I'm loving the beard. That's new.
It's new, right? Since we last spoke. Yeah.
I feel like I'm really missing out on the best part of the lockdown, which is to grow like a post-Korean beard to kind of indicate the length of time that has passed. I'm trying that with my hair sometimes, but it's less spectacular. It just leads to bad hair days.
Yeah.
How are you guys? Looking great. So great to see you all and meet you for the first time, some of you.
So the last time we spoke, you came to my podcast and you released that article, that epic article, Interintellect. And I have this quote from it. So just for people who don't know, the Interintellect is a concept that was sort of like gesturing towards a certain group of people that were at the intersect of a bunch of different things. They're kind of like tribalist people that were trying to do good in the world. And there's this quote from that paper. It was emerging philosophy that doesn't yet have a platform or presence in public discourse. And now it does. You created it. So I'm curious about how that happened, that concept of Interintellect. And now this is a space that's kind of quite popping. And maybe you can explain a little bit more about what it is for people who are just figuring it out for the first time.
Sure, and right back at you when it comes to creating beautiful spaces on the internet. I think what really prompted me to write We're a Niche, We Just Didn't Know, which was supposed to be this little autobiographical piece on Medium and then kind of blew up in May 2019, that was this general unease that I felt when I tried to find a place for myself and for my thinking and for my conversations in how the public square was laid out at the time. I felt that while we are constantly being bombarded with notions of division, and you're constantly pressured to take sides in instances that are so clearly trade-offs and complicated and depending on the situation or the person. And I really felt that millennials and Gen Z and the extremely online people can't really take sides in some of these questions. Whether that's just like adulting, are you a city person or a countryside person? Are you progressing in your career linearly? Are you online or offline? I think a lot of people in our generation, felt that these divisions just don't make sense anymore. It's become complicated in ways for which we don't really have the words yet. And I really became interested in the center space, but center space not in the political sense necessarily, but what if you say, okay, there's this Venn diagram where most people are trying to play out their lives and their games, what if we just put that aside and say, there are individuals, there are thoughts, there are desires, there are plans. How can we create spaces for building common knowledge, for building consensus, or for just getting our own notions challenged? I think most people, if it's a friendly and non-confrontational space, would love to get their notions challenged. How can we do that? How can we grow? How can we learn from each other? So I think it came out from this frustration with the divisions. It helped that I'm an immigrant. Was completely kind of outside mainstream society when I was living in London. And you somehow just see that hallucination from the outside and you're thinking, guys, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that doesn't apply to any person I know. But I didn't know that there were so many people like that. I first had to start whistling in the dolphin language, and suddenly a lot of people heard that and started gathering in fast physical spaces around the world, holding Interintellect salons in living rooms and in cafes and in parks, often in locations or even on continents that I'd never been to. And so I was like, oh yeah, okay, so we have a salon ongoing in Mumbai for some reason right now. I've never been there, still haven't been to India, sadly. And then we just basically moved that whole movement online when the need arose because of the lockdown, but also people were like, yeah, I don't want to be constrained by the fact that I happen to be in New York City. I would love to hang out with the people in Berlin, et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of came from this very, I like to use the word civic, that we are a civic space in that we, engage individuals who love to think freely and critically about a bunch of things. Living with this amazing right that we have together and share thoughts.
And so, yeah, I just put Anna's article in the chat if you ever want to check it out. It's pretty excellent. She kind of nails this sort of emerging phenomenon of the interintellect. I'm curious, so I've been doing this for a year now, or come March 21st, is Stoa's 1 year anniversary. And you sort of had that online presence of Interintellect when COVID came online as well. How did it evolve? I'm curious, throughout the year. Like, what was it like when at first? I imagine the energy, the excitement, the knowingness, the fear, and the community kind of finding itself throughout this year. And I imagine people come and go as well. So just any general thoughts of the evolution?
Wow, thank you. So in December 2019, I moved to Brussels from London because I realized that I had to just basically, work on this full time. And I was looking for a space where I could live and afford to just, be fully devoted to this one thing alone. And one of the first things that happened was that I got COVID. So in January, February last year, I was just incredibly sick and literally sitting at home for 5 weeks with a thermometer in my mouth, 3 blankets, vapor rub on me, not able to breathe. It was just not, it was not amazing. And after a couple of weeks, I was like, I can see that all these Interintellect salons are happening all over the world, but I'm just sitting at home and I very strongly felt that, okay, how can I contribute? I don't even have a speaking voice. Let's open a Slack. And so I put this Slack link on my Twitter. And yeah, we basically, after 5 days, we used up to 10,000 messages free tier on Slack. So I was like, oh, okay. Okay, there are people who will come. If you build it, they will come. So we started moving around, trying to find a good community forum and figuring out how, if we have an online community as well, how do the online the live events relate to that? And it has kind of, we've had this tango between the two things ever since. Currently, we have an online community on Discord that has around altogether 1,200 people. So it's not big, but it's very noisy in a good way, very loud. And we've done, I think, like 400 events, each 3.5 hours, 3 hours long, have entertained thousands of people. We had 160 hosts who host their salons. We created an economic model so people can, if they want to, they can make money hosting salons. And just, we try to continue what we started around the world, which was that, if you are in Atlanta and you want to do your Interintellect community there, then we can give you the resources and make it, economically plausible for you to do so without having to work around in a very centralized way, right? So we don't hire the hosts like, hey, you go and do that. It's more like, if you want to do it, we will do anything we can. And you would say, oh, it's just the internet, geography doesn't matter, but I like to say that sleep is the new geography. So it does matter because people are awake at different times. And if you do a salon where, for some people it's the morning and for some people it's the evening, it's very different vibes. So we do have, Australian community. We have people in Portland, the great people of Portland. We have, Southern US states. We have, Southern Europe. And they are doing their own thing, often in different languages now. So it's, I just feel like, it's something where I enable and help and support and train and make sure that if somebody has a question, they can come to me. But it has gone far beyond just like me doing things. Actually, in We're Niche, we didn't know. It's full of polls, right? So every paragraph is like, this is what I've observed. This is what I think. And now please you tell me what you think, because I don't know, right? I'm just one person. And I think probably when you build a community and when you shepherd a community, or what was the word you used? You're the guardian of the Stoa?
I like the guardian, but Stewart.
Stewart, I love that. Sorry,
It's my beard that makes it seem like a guardian.
Actually, we have an amazing salon tomorrow about medieval war and violence. And if you want a lot of stewardship and people running around with flags, come tomorrow to Matt Clifford's salon. It's going to be very gory. We will have an execution section in the in the salon. But otherwise, it's pretty peaceful. But we do have a couple of hardcore things. So I think, for me, figuring out how to run this democratic city-state that has grown up around me, it's been, the most humbling and most incredible experience of my entire life. And I've done some pretty wild things in my life. So it's not like I haven't done anything else ever. But there's nothing like this. And I feel extremely privileged and blessed and lucky for having been able to probably just, being in the right time, at the right time in the right place, and happening upon the right words, like yourself, to name something that people had been feeling. And the most common feedback that I get for the first Medium article that you mentioned as well is that I sent this article to my parents to explain what I'm doing with my life. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I'd had that. I wish I had that myself at the time. So probably that's how I would tentatively summarize our operations.
Mm-hmm. So we had Yancey Strickler, the co-founder of Kickstarter, and he's doing this bentoism thing, and he has his own community. And we were chatting about how, his community, there's like, it just felt right and purposeful launching it. And same thing with the Stoa, I felt perfect. Like it was needed to kind of allow a beacon for people to cohere with a certain vibe and whatnot. But he was saying kind of like 1 year of COVID, some of the lockdown measures are reducing in certain places, spring's on the horizon. There's like the phenomenon of Clubhouse. It's sort of like the meaning of these online digital spaces, especially if they're on Zoom, are not as clear cut for him. And then I would say for myself as well, I'm trying to discover what the Stoa is going to be after its 1 year anniversary, assuming it stays around after that, maybe the end of the Stoa party. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts and reflections on that and the tension of, interintellect and what it is and what it could be.
Thank you so much. I think in many ways we will be what the members in the community need. I always call us, virtual city. We are a city with citizens, and they shape most of the activities. One of the things that has been really striking to me about Interintellect is, I've literally been looking at the fellow Interintellect's faces for a year. Like, this is my job. I go on Zoom calls or look at photos from offline events that occasionally are happening again. And I've seen people flourish this past year. I look at photos from last March and April, and I'm looking at people struggling with trying to find their place in the world, or with the general panic of change, with personal crises, with long distance relationships, with, not knowing how to deal with the uncertainty as graceful individuals, ready to meet the challenges. And today I go on I randomly drop into Interintellect Salons, and I see people flourishing. And our members are starting new studies and jobs and moving around and writing on Substack and doing podcasts and having found myriads of friends in the II. Sometimes the partners, like people are moving in together, and falling in love. And when I consider this, I feel really almost, kind of taken aback that, oh my God, I have so much responsibility here, and it's so incredibly beautiful that in some weird way I've been entrusted with this. And I want to, whatever will make people continue to flourish in front of me will be done. And Interintellect indeed is a dolphin sound. It's very self-selective in many ways. And often it often surprises me. There are parts of our culture, our community that, surprised me. Not just that so many people, found partners in the II, right? So it was not something that I was, in any way promoting. But how many people were ready to change jobs, for instance, and found mentorship and found encouragement in the II? How many people were just waiting for the last push to engage in public speaking, and how Interintellect empowers people to undertake this that seemed so scary to them. People in my community tell me that they run into each other at different events that are outside our platform, and they can immediately tell that somebody's from the II because they have this almost pastoral knowledge of how to address a crowd, and they didn't have that before. That sometimes it's very we have a gardening channel, for God's sake. It doesn't come from me, I swear. We have a very big psychedelic culture in the II that also does not come from me. And we have a very strong ASD support subculture in the II as well. That is, just maybe 10% of the community, but it's really important. And, my job there is to make sure that this is happy and healthy and everybody can do their thing. And then I get the hell out of that room because I have nothing to do there. And I think having that, flexibility and soft governance can do magic. We learned a lot from Nadia Eghbal's book, actually, Working in Public, where I think this is the first really firm framework outlined about the first days and the incredible success of GitHub, and how they basically are transplanting governance knowledge into moderating software communities, and how to think about that. I think probably that was one of the main kind of realizations for me, that's how it works. And we are going to do on 1st of April, we have a salon on Jane Jacobs and Einar Ostrom, and the untragedy of the commons is I think the subtitle. So we take this thing very seriously, and we think that online communities are raising the next generation of world leaders, because these are the skills and this is the governance knowledge and experience that will be needed in the 21st century, not necessarily what you learn in governance school, however beautiful the lawn was before COVID.
Right. So start putting your questions in the chat. I'll ask Anna one more question. So I've been keeping kind of track of other online communities like Interintellect, Justin Murphy's Indie Thinker, Rebel Wisdom, their Digital Campfire. They're probably 3 and 4 out of the most interesting places, by the way. And this kind of like the challenges of being the nexus point, like for me or you. And there's like this tension between the collective intelligence of like that's a term we use in this space, kind of like letting the collective intelligence do its thing. And here at the Stoa, I can speak behalf of myself. It's like I'm enabling a lot of people just to do a lot of cool stuff. Like we have like 20 events a week. Some of them are reoccurring. I don't even know what's happening half the stuff here. We have like breath work, collective presencing, we have freestyle rap stuff. And it's not like I engineered or designed any of that stuff. It's just sort of like there's a vibe, there's a je ne sais quoi about the people who suggested these things, and something emerged. But at the same time, I'm sort of the curator of the space. And there's a tension, a lot of projections, parasocial projections. A lot of people want to come on and do this, and it doesn't feel like the right vibe. And then there's drama behind the scenes and all that type of stuff. So I kind of want to talk about the drama a little bit. But any what are the challenges that you're faced with by running this like digital village or city, as you called it?
This is super interesting. So we are not an over-moderated community. We have a code of conduct for the Discord. We have a code of conduct for salons. We never had to enforce it during a salon. We had to, I think we've altogether maybe removed 2 or 3 people from the entire community in 1 year. So it's very, very peaceful. What I see an interesting challenge, and I would love to hear thoughts about this in the room as well, is that we are very starkly non-political. Tyler Cohen calls us post-political. We don't, and by political, I don't just mean the partisan politics. I also mean, the contemporary drama on Twitter and whatnot. We don't do that. We do talk about politics and, history in the general sense, or economics, like, as you would at a university probably, and, at a functional university. But we don't, because we have such a strict anti-marketing and anti-agenda policy. You can't do any, religious marketing or political missionary work in the II. Like there's really zero tolerance. Like I will come and you will be removed, because the people are there in the II because they don't want that, right? It's a space where that doesn't exist, in the sense that we are new, we are starting from zero, and so we don't engage in those things. And this is both an advantage and a disadvantage, right? We could, of course, inflate the community in some sense if we went into that kind of thing, whichever side or whichever of the many sides, and it's a conscious choice to say no, we're not doing that. We don't have either startup pitch learning events nor any overly topical events. And everybody seems to understand it, who is in the II, but of course I don't see the people who choose not to join the II because they are missing this content. In many ways, the fact that we have a multitude of these online communities creates a very healthy market. And so, for people who are looking for II type vibe or the Stoa type vibe, they can find it. And for people who are looking for something more, related to contemporary politics or, the rationalist movement or the futurist transhumanist movement or the, let's not eat things, just the rays of the sun, like you can find your crowd, it's fine. But to me, that's, having a relatively strict no drama policy means that, we are indeed missing out on people who love drama. And that's not always the best choice for marketing, but it's a good choice for moderation.
I like that no drama policy. I'm down with that as a Stoic. So Evan, I'll take you in for the first question.
All right. So thanks for coming. I've really enjoyed the Interintellect Salons I've been to. So my question, though, is I'm really interested in the aspects you were speaking of a few minutes ago, the sort of dance between the online and physical aspects of our world, so our generation. So as a Stoa regular, I've been wondering for a while what happens to places like the Stoa, and I guess like Interintellect, also once the COVID lockdowns are over and people have more options for, say, in-person socializing. And since it seems that you already have experience with the overlap between in-person Interintellect salons and online Interintellect salons, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts about how these online digital campfire spaces and the communities that have grown up surrounding them will or might evolve as in-person socializing becomes possible again, and how to keep the flame going, or I guess whether we even really want to, when people will shortly have a lot more options for what they do with their time.
Oh, I love this question, because every day I'm like, I want to do this in person. I want to gather and I have a glass of wine with people and break the bread, literally. I think we will move on. And I think this is true for the Stoa as well, probably, that we will have hybrid models, and you will have online events and offline events, and they will be a little bit different. I do think that while they say that the post-vaccine summer is going to be extra hedonistic and everybody will be hanging out at orgies and then, I don't know, nude beaches, okay. But I also think that probably there's going to be a relatively slow, transitioning back to normal. It's not guaranteed that, from September 2021, we will be just, wishing to be hanging out at conferences with 500 people and going to the theater right away. And I think that, as online communities, we have an enormous responsibility when it comes to re-socializing mankind, because we are the hybrid ones. The universities and the online communities are the hybrids that can help humanity to go back to what the new normal will be. And so I'm just like, let's embrace the hybrid. Let's think about, how to have both, because the future is going to be a hybrid, right? It's not like, oh, I've made all these friends around the world and now suddenly I won't care about them because I can go to the park. No, you will still care about them, but you will also want to go to the park. And I think most of the technological innovation when it comes to social will be also around this space, from the walking meetings to the hopefully much better VR experience providers. So, we will just do hybrid and see where the people take it. Maybe there will be online communities that will be more, maybe it's going to be a spectrum. I'm really curious, I think when you're a founder, you're a little bit like an anthropologist, that you are building and observing at the same time. And often you're just, Jane Goodall looking at the jungle, what are they doing? And then you try to deal with it in the most constructive way possible. So that's me, Jane Goodall, with the binoculars, waiting for the next step.
Any follow-up, Evan?
Yeah, quick follow-up. So you use the word hybrid a lot, and I'm pretty sure this isn't what you meant, but what it called to mind for me is events where you have people socializing in an in-person salon, but with some remote members there. And I'm wondering if you've considered that at all, because some of us are in spaces where, like for me, the Interintellect and the Stoa and similar spaces were a revelation, because I hadn't found anyone who was interested in talking about the stuff that I was interested in, like for years and years and years. And now I have this group of people, and precisely none of them live within like 500 miles of me, as far as I can tell. So it will be interesting to see how that all pans out, especially when you have these bigger cities with enough people to form a critical mass of in-person events. So do you have any thoughts about how to sort of tie that together and maybe like a hybrid approach is my question.
Love it. Thank you so much. Yes, and I think that's going to be the experience of an increasing number of people, right? So many people have left the major centers, right, in the world. People moved to Oxford from London, or somewhere in Texas from San Francisco, for instance, or into Utah, right? And of course, some of those people will move back to LA and New York City or Boston, but not everybody. And this will, create much more demand for on-demand intellectual entertainment in your living room. I'm really, really interested in streaming. And I have these fantasies of doing a salon in my own living room and, having the cheese and the wine and the music like you guys did at the beginning, and, holding a wonderful discussion on, I don't know, Platonic dialogue. And then there will be a couple of people basically watching from, Texas and Mumbai and south of Spain. We will see how creepy or not creepy that is, but it will definitely be attempted. And I think, when we say gathering around the campfire itself will change a lot in this sense. And then there will be technologies that we can't really imagine yet necessarily, right? because if this is happening as a trend, then people will build tools for that.
To follow up on Evan's question, I'm curious how you're interfacing with Clubhouse. We've had a few experiments, but it's a different beast than having Zoom sessions.
Oh man, I'm so on the fence about Clubhouse because first of all, I love the founders. I've participated in a couple of amazing conversations there. The II has their own lounge there on Wednesdays. It's run by Alex Yao, one of our fantastic hosts. So, but I am very irritable to sound, so I very, very rarely listen to podcasts or even music in the background or any audiobooks, never. I'm usually in silence the whole day, and then I read, write, and then I have meetings where I have video or occasionally phone meetings. I don't know, like podcasts haven't really convinced me to do an audio phase into my life or insert an audio slot into my days. We'll see if Clubhouse can do that. Of course, I have a massive FOMO. Sometimes I read these amazing quotes and I'm like, hey, I would have liked to have heard that. But it's just I'm very weird with audio. I just had a conversation before this with somebody who was like, you should do because it would be so great for marketing for the II. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know. There are like 15 things that I could be doing that would be amazing for marketing. And you know, we will see.
Yeah, I'm finding kind of once you get like sophisticated with a certain tool, like Zoom's a tool, right? It's like an artistic tool that you can use to have really great conversations. And then Clubhouse is a tool too, but it's different, has different, it pulls you in different ways. Say that again.
How did it go for you for Stoa meetups?
Yeah, it was, so our first one that we had, it was like, almost like 50, 100 people were in. Then someone came in that had like 2 million followers. And it's like, within a minute, like thousands of people were in the room. And then that's just kind of like what it does to my body. Like, okay, the performance mode kicks in and then kind of like the more pressure's on. So it's almost like you're performing with conversation in a way. And which is cool. And it's like a good filtering mechanism if I want to be used for that. But I haven't really figured out how to sophisticatedly interface it with what's existing in the Stoa. So let's take in Benita Roy.
Hi, very much enjoying this. I have kind of an imaginal question, so I just hope you can relax into the imaginal aspect of this. But, I hear these spaces, like Peter says, it's mimetically neutral. He's a Stoic. And I spent a lot of time today looking at the Interintellect because of this session. And I get it. I'm the same way in a lot of my artifacts. I'm politically neutral. But I start to see them as kind of like the Parisian cafes that under certain historical retrospectives are said to have really been the origins of the French Revolution. And I suspect that you're not that naive to think that there's no relationship to what you're doing and potential future positive change. And I understand the neutrality because the old conflicts are not interesting. They're just not interesting. Those frames are not interesting. So my question is for each of you, because I'm wondering if there's a different nuance. What would be the outcome of the revolution from your spaces? And this is completely imaginary. I know you don't want to throw a bias, and I'm not asking you to do that, but to be like imaginative, that would be great. Thank you.
Should I take that first? It's interesting because Salons started as gatherings for aristocrats, actually, and it was far more ancien regime than revolutionary. A little bit different in London with their, the Lloyd's cafe houses and stuff like that, that were in some cases anti-monarchists. It's a really interesting question. So I like to, say that politics is the participants. Right? Politics equals participants. There's no politics that is not related to the participants or, contained in them. And so when you have new participants, that means you have new politics, even if it doesn't have a new name yet. So I do believe that, that this big pool of new thinkers that Interintellect is moving in, and the Stoa and other online communities and some new publications are moving around, do engage with new the future of politics, but I don't think it's going. I think it's going to be more correlation than causation. I don't think that the hangout spaces where some potentially disruptive new ideas will be born necessarily arise from the space. From my perspective, I'm making sure that the space is healthy. Is some kind of a guarantee that the ideas will also be positive and constructive. I think it's very, very difficult to come up and nurture a very destructive idea in a space geared toward that kind of equality and balance and patience that Interintellect is, cultivating. But yes, so, the revolutions of the future will be born in one of these new cafes. Absolutely.
I never claimed I was mimetically neutral, Benita. I don't think I ever said that anywhere. I think it was more political aporia, like I don't really know. And I'm not drawn to electoral politics, and a lot of it is above my pay grade, so I just don't really, like, stoically, I don't touch it. But yeah, I agree with Anna. And I like Interintellect. It seems like they got the salon space like unlocked. That's the place where you have salons. With the Stoa, it has like a wisdom gym, so we have like these practice sessions, and then we have more of like this, like a communal podcast. Someone comes in and we talk to it. So it's like a different thing, but the same essence is there, I think, where all this unexpected cross-pollination of ideas may emerge, and who knows what can come out of that. And I view a place like the Stoa and perhaps Interintellect as a portal away from the culture war noise on Twitter and everything, in towards more embodied tribes. So away from mimetic tribes to embodied tribes, and kind of building the conditions for that to happen without kind of engineering the content of what is spoken about.
And if I can just add something to that, I think neutrality is incredibly important, and being the outsider in the positive sense. And I think that's why a lot of women, a lot of immigrants, people who have a little bit of an outside view on the big games, the big competitions in business or mainstream culture, can be so decisive, even if you're Canadian, not American. Like any little angle there that permits you to say, I open this space, and this space is a little bit more equal, a little bit more neutral than what you are normally used to. And it's super, super important. And I think it's incredibly empowering for people who might see their own positions as outsiders as a negativity. It's most often very difficult, to compete from that standpoint or from that position. But I think in this regard, when it comes to conversations and engaging the widest array of people into it, it's actually a superpower. People sometimes ask me, like, yes, the fact that I'm an Eastern European immigrant, I'm a woman, I come from the humanities, I never worked at a major tech company, at a major VC, I never voted in the US or the UK, like there are all these things that actually enable me to host some of the conversations that people who have done that may not be credibly able to do while appearing neutral. I am neutral, I'm politically neutral, like I don't have voting rights in certain places, like it's a fact. And so I can be the messenger in that sense, right? Who says, I open my living room to all kinds of thinkers, to all kinds of sides. And I will be able to host that and keep it balanced. So I encourage everybody in the room to think about what are those things where you feel that they make you an outsider and you might feel self-conscious about it, or that it's a negativity, and how can you turn it around a little bit and say, oh, actually it enables me to go into spaces where there is division, where there's a hierarchy that hasn't been tried yet, and just try it. And you will see how easy it is if you are in fact from a defensively neutral position to actually, create that relief of peace that I think most people are looking for.
Any follow-up questions, Benita? Do you want to stress test us or call us out?
No, I was thinking something like the way you host these things, there's nothing to defend, right? So there's nothing to defend. So there's all a possibility. And that reminds me of something Hannah Arendt said. She said, whenever people gather publicly, so I mean, we're not publicly gathered, but it's a big difference between sitting at home and even being on an internet meeting, because you have made the step to be witnessed, to be known you're here. That she said that's politically powerful. So, and then another last comment is kind of a funny one. I'm thinking of like you and Peter as like the coffee shop people who, like, you know, they come and they take Simone de Beauvoir and what's the other guy, the big guy, come on. Sartre's little like coffee, you know, coffee cups and there's cigarettes, and and literally he's just this little guy, but he goes in the back and he's like, you know what they said? You know what I'm saying? So like there's this role of like being in service.
We're all Gunther from Friends. Gunther from Friends. That's who we are.
Yeah. So yeah, just playing with seeing that repeated in a modern version was fun. Thank you very much.
So I finally know how Bonita sees me. Getting little cigars from philosophers. Cool. So let's take in David Collins. You had a good question.
Hi, yeah. So I want to play a little bit with the words religious marketing and drama. I'm pretty sure I know what you mean and how those are drawbacks. But I'm also reminded I've got a ridiculous amount of education, a couple of graduate degrees in religious studies and a doctorate in clinical psychology, with advisors in both fields who are pretty sure I belonged in the other field. Given that my interest is in those practices which are most transformative for folks, those experiences that mean most to us in our lives. And as a fun little story, being a little bit intellect identified, when I go on intensive retreats, it's not uncommon for my body, my physical event, to get into some drama. As a little silly example, in Zen, we hold our hand in a certain position, and I noticed on one retreat, my knuckle on one thumb was high, and I would try to just keep it down. A day later, I'm turning my wrist a little bit. A day later, I'm rotating my elbow. 7 days into it, I have to rotate open my shoulder. And in the state I was in order to do that, I had to change my life. All sorts of emotion, et cetera, et cetera. So that's drama. And if I want to share that spiritual experience as something valuable for me, that's religious marketing. My hunch is, in a space like you're affording folks, transformative, meaningful sharing is kind of the point. So where is the distinction between transformative sharing and quote unquote drama or religious marketing?
So drama was more about managing community and gossip and stuff like that, that Peter mentioned, with which I have very low tolerance. We don't tolerate bullying or any kind of discrimination, any, deep, overly aggressive debate that doesn't seem very constructive. This is what I meant by no drama. Interintellect is full of drama. It's show business, man. I mean, we come together and share the deepest thoughts, feelings, transformations, Damascus moments that we have in our life. We talk about religion a lot. I myself have some background in both drama, actually, and theology. We have a very buzzing religious practice channel. We have done multiple salons about religions. We have many deeply religious members, from Buddhists to Mormons to, people practicing Judaism, Catholicism, you name it. It is extremely balanced. We do comparative religion sessions. We do comparative Damascus moments sessions. We do very balanced discussions about atheism. And we try to give a space for everybody to share their own thoughts that has nothing to do with marketing. What is very important to me is that in the II, where people come to have, incredibly relaxed intellectual conversations, we don't create situations where anybody would be defensive because they feel that somebody is trying to sell something to them, whether that is selling a specific faith without respecting what the faith is of that person that you're trying to sell to, a product, any, stance on world politics. We're much more about asking questions and if a transformative experience happens at an Interintellect event, that's fantastic, and we're there for it. But nobody is going to push you. So I think that's what I meant. It is full of drama. I mean, it's. I always say that we are competing with Netflix. So it's very entertaining in that sense. But it's entertaining for a specific kind of person who finds, sitting around talking about Socrates or Saint Paul or Sartre interesting and a fun thing to do on a Saturday night.
That all makes a lot of sense. And I'm reminded there's different ways to use the words, but one can speak of belief as a mind-closing thing and faith as a heart-opening thing. And even you get intimate, you get open, stuff happens, you're going to transact things, you're going to enact things. But the way you describe it does sound very healthy. Open-minded, open-hearted, going and looking at what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And actually, this was just to kind of reflect on this. We do a lot of host training sessions, and one of the recurring question is that, what should you do as a host if you suddenly find yourself in a room where multiple people are going through a really deeply shaking, experience, and how to be there for people, how to be active listeners, but also, for instance, when the inauguration was happening, multiple hosts were like, "Oh my God, I have a salon at the time. How does my responsibility look as a host with regard to breaking news happening at the same time that people are bound to, hear during a salon?" And, we were like, if there's something going on, then you stop the salon and you guys start watching the news together and commenting and creating a space of togetherness, because that overrides the fact that you wanted to discuss Brecht's use of I don't know what during the salon, so but the same goes for personal breakthroughs. If that happens in togetherness, then that it's the most important thing in the room.
All right, let's try to sneak in one more question. It's a good one. It's a tough one. I don't know if I like it, but it's from Robert Best. Robert, if you can unmute yourself. You're on mute right now, Robert, if you're talking.
Whoops, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I have more and more questions as I've waited and listened, but I'll more or less just read out what I put. So I was saying I was curious about how Interintellect or the Stoa stewards have thought about things like property or ownership of the places that being stewarded, touching on things like decision-making around the infrastructure being used, Zoom, Discord, I think I heard Slack earlier, and how deeply should one read into the sentences like the Interintellect has this, a garden, or something like that. Likely those possessive verbs don't necessarily mean legal ownership, but these things sort of feel like brands. So I'm curious, are they brands? Obviously, on some level, you need to keep the lights on in a sort of metaphorical sense. And yeah, thoughts on the legalities there or otherwise.
Do you mean the IP? Or do you mean
is there IP, or that was I sort of asked, or is this post property?
Interesting question. So I can only speak to myself, of course, and because of my job is to run the II, I have relatively little time engaging with other communities, so I can't really give a comparative overview here. So we try to just do a lot of town halls and speak to the hosts and the community before we make a major decision. Recently, we changed a little bit our pricing model, and that followed 3 months of very intensive discussions with the members, multiple town halls, multiple times a week, separate sessions just discussing different pricing policies that we could adopt. We had a dedicated channel for that was open, so anybody could come who was interested. And then there's a decision. I just don't, honestly, I don't see my job as like, hammering through decisions that nobody likes. I don't see how that would be in any way, helpful or constructive for the community. With regard to IP, it's the hosts, right? So we are a platform in that sense. And for instance, we very often republish articles that the community members write on our Medium, and we just link to the blog or the Substack of the person who wrote it. So we try to just, be the platform that people need to be running these kinds of events, and then not meddle into anything else that they were doing. If in the future, we turn into a publishing house and there are some calls for that, then it might change our relationship with the particular authors there. But at this stage, no. In the community, of course, like the Discord is under my jurisdiction in that sense that for instance, I have moderation rights, which I very rarely use. But if somebody was really misbehaving, I would probably delete the post. Kind of not really caring about the IP there.
Any follow-up, Robert?
Well, probably lots of thoughts, I guess, to touch a little more on the brand stuff. And also, yeah, because there's multiple communities. So just my mind went to things or questions like members in different communities. There's a concept I've learned here, sort of like stealing the culture. Do communities steal from each other so as to sort of be the most interesting place to meet?
It was a big decision for us when we recently built our own booking platform, right? So we were using Eventbrite for a year, and then came a moment when we were like, this is not optimal anymore. We have to own more of the process because, using a third party creates a customer service filter that you have to work your way through if you have a problem, right? And it was slowing us down at a time when we were growing very, very quickly. So that was very important. But for instance, it came up multiple times that should we build video call technology? No, building Zoom is super hard. And, if I can avoid up to the last moment, I will. The same goes for like payment stuff. Like I'm not going to build Stripe. I don't think anybody could do that. And Stripe is awesome. We just use them. So it's a little bit like, if you have a really strong bottleneck technically that disables the community from performing one of its main tasks, then you have to build it. But I think we are in this golden age of community technology as well. So it's very rare. But I do think that building our own ticketing platform for this very specific audience and very specific needs, that was a really good decision. I'm very happy with that.
And I'll share some thoughts. And perhaps this would be a good interintellect session about the gift economy, because the Stoa is based at least on the spirit of the gift economy. We don't charge for events. And I'm curious how that influences the spaces too, because we have facilitators, they're just on the gift economy. People can donate to them or gift to them directly. We have coaches, they gift to them directly. And all our events are sort of free in that regard, but it's deemed as a gift. So I'm curious how that, all your questions, Robert, I haven't even thought about. I just hurts my head thinking about these things. So yeah, I'll ask Anna like a last question. So you've done 400 events, you said, and I think the Stoa has done something like that, 400, 500 events. And then, I know the quality. After an event, you're like, oh, that was fucking delicious. That just like, there was an energy in the air. I don't know what it was. And other times it was like, I don't know what was going on there. Just maybe the mix of people or something awkward happened, or the topic wasn't the right thing. So yeah, what makes a beautiful conversation?
Silence. A host being able to hold the room, have everybody's thoughts revolve around the same thing, in openness and kindness, and suddenly falling silent. because the magic happens in silence. The conversation is just the food for it. And then you've eaten and then you have to go quiet.
I like how Anna brought out her best move right at the end. It's like, boom. Very cool. Yeah.
This was an accident. I would never have been able to actually plan this. Actually, this is a really good example. Like, the accidents make a good event. Like something awesome happening,
100%.
two people randomly being there. You said je ne sais quoi. I always say je ne sais quoi. It's like, you know, let the magic happen. It's show business. It's live entertainment. You don't know who's going to be there. You don't know what your mood will be as a host. You don't know anything. You don't know how many of the readings the people will have read who are there, how many fellow hosts will be in the room, right? And it's a little bit like when you start the call or when you open your door, if it's an IRL event, you know, you open yourself to the uncertainty of this, and with the confidence and the authenticity that whatever happens, you know, everybody in the room is incented to make it work. Nobody's there to hurt you. You can just chill out, and maybe that's why we have the psychedelic community now. Now that I noticed some parallels immediately. Just, you know, trusting people. And actually, in my life, this does come from religious experience of knowing that everybody who has gathered is there to have a good time and to make each other have a good time. And your job is to allow that to happen. And this is probably something that technology has to learn from online communities in this coming decade, because this is something that we have figured out, I think, and they haven't yet.
Yeah, I like that. There's this quote from Hemingway that I follow. It's like, to find out if someone's trustworthy, trust them. And I feel like, you know, my trust muscle and my discernment there has like increased like tenfold by just engaging in this sort of nebulous online space. Because, you know, it's like the currency there is trust.
Absolutely. You know, my moderation philosophy has been like, I trust you guys. You are adults. You are smart. You are here because, you know, you want to do this specific thing, and just do that. And I do think that this vote of confidence, which is such a really beautiful expression in English, a vote of confidence. This vote of confidence is why we didn't really have to moderate. You know, because nobody is watching you. You can just like be yourself, and you will be trusted to just bring your beautiful self.
Beautiful. So I'll make some closing announcements in a moment, but Anna, any kind of closing thoughts, anything you'd like to leave us with? Anything that came alive?
Just congratulations on your space, and this is wonderful, and thank you so much for the questions and for making me think a little bit because this is wonderful. And yeah, let's go to each other's events. Let's go cross-pollinate.
Yeah, 100%.
But we have a couple of critics of the Stoics in the II who are very much like, you know, Humean passionistas, and I would love a debate.
Take me in, I'm there. Interintellect debate with the Stoic of the Stoa. I'm happy to do it. And I will be visiting. I'm going to take a little break from the Stoa, and I'll be visiting Interintellect. It's hard when you're running like 20 events a week, and then there's like a 3-hour event. I've been trying to go every month to Interintellect. I just couldn't. And Zoom fatigue is one of the things maybe I wanted to talk to you about too, because like it's a real thing.
Sometimes people invite me and I'm like, when? Like, what is the thing that I don't do so I can go to your event? I can maybe like carve it out from my sleep sometimes, but no. But I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to do is like do one event, podcast, meeting, anything, a talk that is non-II related. Often, I mean, I end up talking about the II most of the time, but that is not on our platform because, you know, I've been just like terrible at following up for so long. I'm trying to be better at that.
Yeah, I'm actually doing the same kind of thing too, so that's cool. And thank you for coming to the Stoa today, Anna. That was great fun. I'd love to have you back. And just do a quick announcement of an upcoming event or symposium that's happening tomorrow at the Stoa. I'll share my screen. Let us maybe make the meta-crisis our superordinate goal. So the meta-crisis is the constellation of existential risks and suffering risks that threaten our existence. We're having 6 sessions that day. Benita Roy, you have a session that day. Do you want to unmute yourself and plug it? It's kind of cool theme if you're still there.
Sure. I think we're going to take an excursion into the Bardo realms. We're going to use Trungpa's definitions of everyday bardo, and we're going to look at the possibility that the internet and things like the Stoa actually keep us in the bardo realm, because the bardo realm can be attractive. There's lots of things going on. There's lots of transformations we can make, but maybe it makes us afraid to get back into our bodies and back into real life. And I think that COVID is a question, you know, are we going to get back in after our bardo interruption? So yeah, we'll look at it from that model.
Beautiful. That her event, Benita, is at 12 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And then our 1-year anniversary, maybe the end of the Stoa party, is happening on March 21st. It's going to be a death ritual. We're going to find out what happens, if we're going to leave the bardo realm or not, or stay in it. We'll find out. So that being said, Anna, everyone, thanks for coming to the Stoa today.